Welcome to the Strong MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jaime Seeman, and on today's episode, I'll be sitting down with Dr. Melissa Cady. Her mission as the Challenge Doctor is to ICE, that's inspire, challenge, and educate on the importance of challenging your mind and body for more optimal health and wellness. With certifications in anesthesiology and pain medicine, Dr. Cady has been working on creating a community for those who suffer or are challenged by pain. With the stress of life in the medical system, she has launched the podcast, The Changed Physician, focusing on the mindsets, skills, and strategies that are important for every human to develop. Whether Dr. Cady is trying to role model a healthier lifestyle or explaining approaches to health issues to her patients, she has always felt compelled to make a difference. I'm so excited to have Dr. Cady on today's episode of the Strong MD podcast. Let's get after it. Please enjoy. Dr. Melissa Cady, welcome to the Strong MD podcast.
Thank you for having me. I love the name of it. Strong MD is awesome.
It's great to be here. And I can't wait for our listeners to hear a little bit about your story. So give us your background and your journey in medicine.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of people think that I just knew I was going to be a physician from the beginning, and that wasn't the case. It was just kind of a second thought, and went to college and couldn't make up my mind because I love learning. So I loved a lot of things. So I ended up getting good grades. And towards the end of college, I decided to apply to medical school. So got into UT Houston, which I could have been an MD there. And then I got accepted into the osteopathic school in Fort Worth. And I almost went into massage therapy. I just love manual stuff and loved to work out, played sports, and it just fell in line with my interests. So I went and became a DO and did all of that and never could make up my mind what I wanted to do there either, because I loved everything, because you spend a month doing something on your clinicals. Yeah. And I literally probably loved 10 things. But then kind of for complicated reasons and prior relationship, I decided to try for interventional radiology and got close, didn't get that, but I ended up discovering anesthesia. And I've always felt like I wanted to be that person that could handle, I know it sounds crazy, but if you're on a plane or you're in the middle of nowhere and you want to handle an emergency, I wanted to be able to do that. And I didn't like just giving orders to nurses. I actually wanted to know how to do some of the things that they did. And so I felt like it was a nice blending of nursing, physician. And so I could care for one patient at a time, unless I'm supervising, but I could do the actual manual work of that. I love procedures. So I decided to do anesthesia, but along the way, I couldn't take a year off when I was making my decision. So ironically, I ended up doing a general surgery year when I scrambled because I didn't get into radiology. And then I did a year of internal medicine because I couldn't take a year off to make up my mind. And so I ended up doing general surgery, internal medicine, and then went back and got the anesthesia position. So I did 3 years of anesthesia. And then I discovered pain along the way and dealt with my own pain things, especially as an athlete or doing anything physical. You've learned how to appreciate the body's innate healing abilities and how to pace yourself and be smart. So I went ahead and just did a year pain fellowship, not knowing if I was going to actually do that, but I just figured I should do it right away and not go into practice and come back. So I can go on to explain to where I'm at now, but
tell us what your day-to-day clinical practice is like now.
Well, I have always, since I finished all my training, and I had gotten out of an unhealthy relationship. And so I think part of my mindset was non-committal. So I didn't want to commit to a job full time. I didn't want to commit to a relationship. I just wanted to just kind of explore and be free. And I think really deep down, I knew that even though we got used to working so hard in our training, I felt like I didn't want to give myself 5 days a week to somebody. So I actually, out of all of my training out the chute, I only worked 2 to 3 days a week and just trying to find myself again and figure out what I want to do. And I was trying to figure out if I wanted to do pain. What I discovered through that process is that I didn't agree with what was going on out there because I was learning more about modern pain science, which was not taught to us during our pain fellowship or in medical school for that matter. And I found it fascinating, and it fell in line with how I've been self-managing conservatively a lot of things. So I decided I was going to share my voice and just put it in a book called Pandemic. And before the pandemic happened, that was actually 2016 that finally happened. It went out and published. But through all that and deciding I wasn't going to be part of the mainstream pain world, I just fell back into just general anesthesia. And then I ended up working 4 days a week for a group for almost 10 years. And that's where the golden handcuffs happened. So I ended up being, you feel like you got all these benefits and you just trying to change out of that and to try something new and go out on your own is just really frightening. I didn't feel frightened, but it was kind of in the background. I was just being held to that definitive amount of money. It seems secure, and then all of those mind things that go on. And at some point, we just decided we weren't a good fit. I was a huge patient advocate, and we just decided to part ways. I went on my own, did locums from 2019, end of 2019 till the pandemic hit. And then one of the surgeons I used to work with a prior group reached out to me and said, I want you to do all of my cases. I need consistency. And I want for you to care for them. Well, he had another partner. And so I cared for 2 plastic surgeons at a surgery center every other day. They were opposite days. And that was my own business. And I loved it. And I created an experience that I felt like if we can do it, we should do it, especially these elective cases. They're spending a lot of their own cash, like really exchanging value. They know what they're getting versus like insurance behind the curtain and all of that. So I ended up creating like pre-op virtuals online. I was going to do that regardless of the pandemic. And so I give them an opportunity to talk to me so that their nerves are better the day of surgery, better understanding. I can deal with things that maybe need to be addressed beforehand. I'm less stressed because I'm dealing with transitioning between cases and you feel rushed talking to the patient. Mm-hmm. So that was the business model I really enjoyed. And then I created, something that you understand is just like, if you say things over and over and over again, you might as well put it on video and let patients have access to it.
Right.
So I educate before they see me in pre-op virtual. We talk on a pre-op virtual. I see them again. I feel like more like the surgeon where they're like, hey, how are you doing? Versus like, by the way, you need to trust me and I'm going to take care of your life. So yeah, that's what I've done. And there's been some changes because surgery center and politics and other things, but I've essentially, I'm still with 2 surgeons, but now they conflict days. And I have a colleague that I've, after about a year of her contemplating the same kind of move, she's so much happier and she's helping me help cover those surgeons. And I'm about to go take a nice vacation because I have her to help me. So wow. I'm essentially a general anesthesiologist, but running my own business. And then I do a lot of playing online and trying to find my other little educational. There's a lot of other things I've done online, but that'll take.
You're still working part-time clinically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us what you fill your time with when you're not being an anesthesiologist. Okay.
This is actually going to sound strange, but I do love being a physician, but I do love a lot of other things. And my husband will say that I'm just always finding projects. Like I love being outside. I'm learning how to garden. I have a couple of pets and spend time with them and do some things, but I feel like I'm always searching for something that's not always trading my time for money. And finding something that is more, because I love so many things, is to find something that is that I can do long term, which that's the hard thing. Like I can get excited really fast about new things, but what is it you really want to spend your time on? And I feel like I struggle a little bit with that because I'm everywhere, but I think that's part of the joy is that you have the variety. So my extra time really is, I do some back office work, obviously, for my business and keep things organized because I don't hire anyone at this point, which is probably a mistake. But for right now, I really enjoy being in control of it because I feel like I'm responsible for the quality of the business and the communication with patients. But I would say my extra time is exercising, getting out and traveling. Like I'm going to be taking a month off. We love to go to Australia, New Zealand. So we've probably been there 6 or 7 times. So I would say that's where a lot of our time is more traveling. I don't have children of my own. I have fur babies. So I don't, which that's another thing as a physician. I never made it a priority. And we're okay with it now. But that was one of those things that we never really or I would say I didn't really push because I was so focused on my career and
Mhm.
building a business.
Yeah, we've
So,
talked about that a lot on this podcast with other
mm,
physicians about, family dynamics and pregnancy and breastfeeding. And
mm,
it's like, as professional, hardworking women, it's something that we see a lot of people really start to kind of, put lower on the priority list.
mm.
Yeah. What do you love about Australia? I've never been.
Oh
Tell it
gosh.
to me.
Well,
Clearly.
it lights me up. Let's just say that. Okay, this is gonna sound crazy now, I'm sure the whole world's just gonna know my crazy little story, but in 4th grade, I wrote a book report on what I call the duck-billed platypus. They just call it the platypus. I love animals. I actually originally thought I was gonna be a vet, but I was
Wow.
probably, like, influenced by other people around me. So probably if I went with my really deep down desire, I probably would have been a veterinarian. Um, but I love animals. I found it fascinating. I think I like things that are different and unique. I'm not the kind of person that likes to gravitate to just people that are just like me. I mean, that's great and all, but I really am intrigued by things that are different, and the platypus is like the perfect example of that. It's one of the only 2 egg-laying mammals in the world. The echidna is the second one, and it's in Australia. Um, and there's a lot of stories behind that, but I think I was drawn to go there. And when I met my husband, he had never been there, of course, and I hadn't been there yet. It was going to be our first trip, and it was together. And I'm like, I want to go for 5 weeks. Like, I'm finally free of training. Let's go. And so we did that, and the culture's different. It's so remote. It is like a 17-hour flight to get there, but it goes really fast, I think. But it's the wildlife, it's the outdoors feeling, it's the culture. They really, even like the malls, like they close like at 5 o'clock. Like Thursday is the late night, like 7 o'clock. Like it's
Interesting.
just a different focus. Not that they don't have, people that are, especially with the World Wide Web and the social
Yeah.
media. I think there's kind of a little bit of a blending of mindsets. It kind of like dilutes it out a little bit, but I still feel like there's a different feeling in that culture than in America. I mean, there's a lot of great things about America. We do have our problems too, but Australia's great, but actually our deepest love is New Zealand, because they don't have poisonous animals. They do have one spider, no one ever sees it, but essentially almost all the poison stuff is in Australia.
So,
Yeah. And New Zealand literally feels like serenity. It is the epitome of, like, I could lay on the grass and not worry about, a spider or a snake, hurting me. And it's just a beautiful country. So I mean, other people may not, find it favorable. It's definitely beautiful.
yeah.
And it's a socialized medicine, so it's got, some things that they are really struggling with for coverage, especially anesthesia, but a
I've
lot of
I've heard of colleagues going to
yeah.
practice there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and some people just do it for, like, a year. There's some people come back, like, 10 years later and decide to live there, and we're at an advantage. Of course, I'd love it to keep it as a little secret, but, at an advantage as a physician. You are deeply desired over there, and you can, go do it, like, a year. You have to go through these different steps, and I've done that
How does
before.
it work as far as, like, transfer of your, medical training?
Yeah, so you have to get approval. Well, like for anesthesia, you have to get your approval through the college of, it's the Australia New Zealand College of Anesthetists. They call them anesthetists there. And they're just physicians, not CRNAs, at least not at this point. And then there's also through I forgot the name of the entity, but you have to go through giving all your credentials. They basically centralize it, and then you have to get approved to even like work there. Before you can get to the college part, you have to get approval. But it's just very tedious. You can do it. I've done it. I've got approval to go work in New Zealand. It wasn't the right timing. I've already gotten approval to work in Australia. I got a job offer in Tasmania, the state of Tasmania in Australia, but we're not quite ready. I mean, we don't want to give up our house here, so
Yeah.
you make less there, but anyway, so yeah, I love it for so many reasons. Now my husband's hooked on rugby league, which is a different version of rugby
Yeah.
in Australia. So yeah,
Fascinating. Fascinating.
yeah.
Okay, so where does one go in Australia to find the duck-billed platypus?
Oh, so you have to go to southeastern Australia or Tasmania. The one in Tasmania is a little bigger. They're a little smaller. They're really struggling with some of the streams, and especially with certain ways that we live in the city, and they have problems with their environment. So there's people that try to protect it. And so, yeah, you can go there. So if you ever want to see it, this took me years to figure out. If you want to be in a tank that they give you a little jumper thing to put over your clothes so you don't get wet, and don't wear red nail polish. I made that mistake. They're actually fearful of the red.
Oh,
Yeah. So my husband got more of the attention when we got in that tank, but they have a little female platypus that you can give little black worms to that they can eat out of your hand. It is the most like amazing experience. And it's in Healesville, which is north of Melbourne. And that's the Healesville Sanctuary is the only place I know that you can actually be in a tank with a platypus.
okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Put it on the bucket list, you guys.
Especially if you have kids. Like, I mean, there's no other place in the world. Now, there are 2 platypus now in the San Diego Zoo. They tried to bring them to New York in 1940s, I think, and they died. And there are 2 that are surviving in San Diego. So if you want to see them just, swimming around, you can go there in the States.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that's cool. Okay.
Random.
So let's back up to this,
Sure.
this pandemic book. You kind of had mentioned, like, I didn't want to do the traditional pain medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of lay that landscape for us. What was it about it that you didn't like or didn't really see eye to eye with?
So I'll say that being in sports and working out, like, you realize that a lot of times things will heal, and and in my osteopathic schooling, even though they say DO is more holistic, I don't find that necessarily true across the board. Like, I find some MDs are more holistic than some, DOs. So to me, it's just, it's all about like how you're seeing everything. But there was some indication to me when I had really bad back pain in my school, at medical school. And I went to this offsite little thing where they're teaching. One of my friends, her father was a DO and did a lot of manual medicine. And I had severe back pain at the time. And I knew it was about a couple months after I'd done a single leg hack squat, which I was just pushing a lot of weight with one leg. And I felt a twinge in my back. And it got progressively worse to the point I couldn't even tie my shoes. And so when I went to this offsite little training thing, they used me as a guinea pig, and they had 4 or 5 people working on me. And I tell you, after that little session, they didn't work on my back. They worked on everything that was like from the knees to the low back area, glutes, IT area, the whole 9 yards between the knees and back. It wasn't, even though I felt pain in my back, they released tension in all these other areas. And I thought to myself, that's like, I got up and 80% of my back pain felt gone. Now, you could equate that to human touch. You could equate just, there's so many things that play into pain. But at that time, I was just like anyone else thinking, okay, this, we do deal with pain with medication and all this stuff. So the fact that I got better, and then I would just, I definitely had people tell me to go get more interventions done or whatever, but I just refused it because kind of an athlete mindset, like, I'll get through it. I'll manage it. But then, so I got better. So that was that initial aha moment. Like, okay, this is not something I thought was going to help me. And it did. And then I get into, all my training, anesthesia, get exposed to pain. Then I was learning all these things that the interventions I was doing for patients. I mean, there are definitely some bad, like, complications that can happen. So those things always alert me and worry me because you don't want to do any harm to patients.
You mean like injections? Epidurals? Like, I mean, what?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I've seen, I know of some people that created someone, made someone paralyzed because of an injection up in the neck. Like, there's things that can happen that's the last thing you ever want to happen to a patient, especially if they could manage it without ever getting that intervention. So I was always that fellow that all knew. I spent like an hour and a half talking to my patients. I was like the annoying fellow that probably didn't see what
talking them out of every procedure.
Yes. And I would just, I wouldn't do as many procedures because I was trying to convey other ways of helping them, and I would help. And then I had a general surgeon, send his daughter to the clinic to get help because I did the $1 million workup to figure out this, like, abdominal pain. And I don't want to go into the details, it's confidential, but essentially I ended up getting that patient, and I did my like osteopathic manual thing, and then did a few things, and she got up from the bed without any pain. And it doesn't mean like I'm a miracle worker. I just happened to hit the nail on the head, and for whatever reason. So that was my other aha moment. Like I was teaching people even how to do physical therapy type maneuvers, and tell them home exercise programs, things that have worked for me that I'd learned along the way, and they were getting better. And so it doesn't mean every single person was, because some of these people are convinced they needed certain things. So I wasn't going to be able to help them
Right.
non-interventionally. But through that process, I'm just seeing also that people are changing. I know this sounds bad, but sometimes things are being changed based on what insurance is paying for.
Mm.
So I was thinking, well, we're supposed to do just what's right for the patient. And I'm like, okay, so not everyone does that. I'm just saying that sometimes there was,
People working the system.
yeah, there was working. So I started getting a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. And this is not necessarily my fellowship, but seeing on the outside what was
Yeah.
going on too. And so I'm like, I'm not about that. I'm a patient advocate. I'm not a pocket advocate. The terms I use in my book. I'm like, we need to like really just help people understand. When I wrote that book, I wasn't deep into pain science. And all I mean by the modern pain science, it all comes down to a very simplistic version of it is pain is about protection. And there are people, to give you examples, and I've done plenty of lectures on this, where you show them they're missing a leg, a portion of their leg, and they feel pain in a foot that's not there. Mm. So how is that possible? Because people think, well, it hurts here. This is the problem. But we know that the brain constructs the pain experience based on inputs that are not just sensory at that location. There are memories, there's emotions, there's thoughts. There's people that can get, like your child can get belly pain because they're nervous about a bully at school, but it doesn't mean they have an abdominal surgical emergency. So when you start thinking of it that way, I mean, true, there's a lot of sensory input in some things, and that could be the dominant force creating the pain experience in the head. But when you start realizing that some people, they may just look at an MRI. Oh, and this is like a giveaway from my book. In one of the chapters, I list out my entire MRI that I didn't need. I just did it for the book. It looks awful. And if I brought it to someone, they would tell me, oh, you need a medial branch block for this low back pain, or you need this or this, or surgery, believe it or not. And then I started seeing patients in my anesthesia world that had 10 surgeries for pain.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming back for the next one because, oh, it's the next level that's the problem. I'm like, we're just pulling the wool over their eyes, because this is, just because you see an abnormality like wrinkles doesn't mean it causes pain. Same thing in the spine. So I felt so compelled to push all of that information out there. I actually am planning on redoing the book. My husband keeps telling me, because I feel like the way I see it now with more
gains like
science,
a different perspective now.
Yes, I think I almost feel like I don't push my first book because I'm like, I need to put it in better messaging. And there's some great people doing it out there already. But I just want to elevate that, more to the public. But I don't necessarily see pain patients. It really is not draining in a bad way, but I care so much that I don't want to. You have to make them responsible for their own care too. Like they have to help themselves. It's like everything else in medicine.
People that get stuck in just that victim role, and
yes,
yeah,
and you don't believe it until it happens to you. Like sometimes it really takes, like even me. When people put their hands on me and I got up, I'm like, how's that going to help my back? You're not even going where my back is. But I didn't understand.
Yeah. So for people listening that maybe are dealing with something that don't want to go the traditional pain route, like what kind of therapies? I mean, are we talking like, massage, manual therapies? Like, what do you feel like are better alternatives to our...
Yeah, it's so hard.
It's probably different on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, we're so unique. And I think they're like, I feel like there's certain providers in all kinds of fields. Like there's psychologists that understand like pain science. There's people that are physical therapists who are McKenzie trained, which is very mechanically oriented. But the reality is you probably have to have an entry point. If you find an entry point with somebody that understands some pain science and they have another skill set, what happens is that all these variables that can contribute to the pain experience, you're probably getting them to some extent in more than one way. So you might go to a mechanically trained person, like a McKenzie trained physical therapist, but if they understand pain science, they can present the environment where you feel safe, where you get manual or like connection with a human being and don't feel like you're just on a, assembly line. There's some follow through and helping you reassess, because part of it is also trial and error. You're trying to figure out what is it your body's trying to tell you with this, experience there. It could be that you have extreme anxiety, never stop going, you never break up your days. I mean, you hear it all the time. People go on vacation and they get out of their routine and their back pain's gone. Like, one guy told me, I asked him what changed because he'd been through like 10 interventions, and it's in my book. He said, I fell in love. He was lonely, isolated, getting more and more out of shape and overweight and eating badly. I mean, all these things are like, it just kind of culminate. And sometimes it shows up as back pain or headaches or, so I think it's really hard to say like exactly who that person is. But I think actually, I should send you the link. Maybe you can add it to notes, but there's some really good pain science, like educational things down in Australia that can be kind of like a guidance in helping you. And they have some books that really kind of help you wrap your head around this. But when you're in pain, you don't necessarily want to be you just want it to go away. So that's the struggle. People, and trying to market that. I've done this. I had a Pain Out Loud community, did interviews with professionals, people who had suffered and found ways that weren't always just interventions. And you just find that people just want the quick fix. And so it's really hard to, for me to have a business
something that's a longer healing
process. It's so hard. And I was just pouring money into that website. I still keep it alive, just paying for the site. I just keep the interviews there for free. But I haven't totally given up. I just feel like I'm just kind of an advocate for people to believe in your bodies and in yourself, to help yourself, because there's so many positive things you can do for yourself. But I think our environment, our society, our community is setting us up for failure in some ways if we fall into the trap of, the 9 to 5 and not figuring out who you are and what really makes you thrive. And so that's why I think being part-time for me has, even though we're always trying to figure out what we want in life, I don't feel like I've figured out the whole, mystery about everything, but I feel like I have time to decompress in ways that other people, I just don't know how they do it without it manifesting some way physically or mentally for them.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Makes sense. So you kind of, you gave this example of this guy like fell in love and his back pain went away. And I think that, we don't realize sometimes how even, emotional stress and things like that can manifest as physical symptoms, just like you described. Can you tell us, you used to be an athlete, or you probably still are, you look, and this is totally judgment. I mean, you still look like you're in good shape. Tell us how you take care of yourself. Like, give us kind of like an idea, like, do you work out? What's your diet like?
I'm not perfect with my diet, I'll say that, but I always try to.
I've never met anybody that is ever.
Yeah. I mean, I have moments where I was like, I went vegan for like a few months, and then and even vegan, you could be unhealthy too. But I did all plant-based diet, and I think what I feel and what seems right to me, I'm trying to learn to make my own food. Like, my favorite things that it's hard for anything to survive in Austin, by the way. But chives come back. I have chives that I cut. I have some fresh cilantro. My husband loves peppers, like hot peppers. So I have like 10 of those plants. I have asparagus, by the way, comes back for 10 to 15 years.
I've heard that.
I'm like, that's crazy. And then you could just let it grow out and let it kind of grow bigger underground. And then it'll make a bigger, more produce later, and a beautiful fern. So what I eat, I try to add greens, the healthy stuff, things that, I'll just put it this way. I love animals. I'm not like on the far end of things. I do eat meat occasionally. But if I had to make my own food, I wouldn't want to kill an animal. So I need to like make sure if I could have chickens, I would have chickens. But my HOA doesn't let that happen. But I always try to get some greens, and that's an important part. Even if I eat some bad stuff, like some sugar, caffeine's a little bit of my struggle right now. I'll be transparent about that. Probably about 200 milligrams a day, which is not terrible, but my sources of caffeine could be better. I'd like to love green tea, but I haven't gotten there. So as far as working out, I love being active. I don't feel right if I'm not active at least every few days. But we take almost a walk every day. We have a dog, we walk. We have a great neighborhood that feels fairly safe to walk. So at least 20 to 40 minutes of walking a day and very light stroll. But then I'll do I have some workout things here, and then I have a membership at a gym that's an Anytime Fitness, so I can do it anywhere in the world when I travel. It's really important to us. We love to actually work out when we're on vacation.
Yeah.
And I do weights a few times. I would say the last few months, because of the change up in my business, has kind of softened that a little bit on intensity. But I'm really excited to get stronger. I love being strong. I don't have to be big. I just love being strong, and I love. I think I fell in love with it in college because
What kind of athlete were you? What sport?
So it was never professional, but I played anything without a racket. So basketball, volleyball, soccer. I did do select soccer. And I wish I'd done tennis. I told my husband, I feel like I missed my calling. Like, I
Now
feel
you
like I would
have
have.
to do pickleball. I haven't
I
played it.
know.
It's like
I want to
not
try
fun.
it.
I'm sure it is an option too. Yeah.
I'm sure I'll get into that at some point. But I love competition. I love sports. But I think when I've gotten older, I've recognized that when you are put into a sport environment or even a group class, you pay attention to your body less, and you're not really adapting it according to what your body's prepared for. So I hate being injured. So I prefer to have structured exercise, or it's just me doing something new, because I am less likely to get hurt, and I don't like off time. So
Yeah. I don't do well with idle time either. Well, thank
yes,
you for your plug on the Strong MD podcast. We like
yes,
people with muscles and strength around here. Yes.
yeah, good, good.
Okay, so you've been somewhat of an entrepreneur outside of
Yeah.
just being a clinician. Do you
Mhm.
have any advice for people who are kind of at that path of, maybe wanting to start their own practice or go out on
Mhm.
their own, or give us everything you've learned in that journey?
Ooh, man, actually this past year I've shared a lot of that knowledge with my best friend who's joined me in this journey. Um, I think it's okay not to know for sure exactly what it is. Sometimes just something that you have like a passion for or you're curious about, I would say just start to work in that space or do some kind of creative work in that space. It's amazing what your mind does and how it expands and is so much happier when you have something to look forward to other than the work you do every day in and out, like with your regular physician job. Um, it's mind blowing how it just expands yourself. And then you start getting excited about all these other possibilities. And that's what my friend's going through as well. Is just, there's just so, it's like the world's your oyster. Like there's
Yep.
anything's possible, and it's almost overwhelming. But I would say that there are some things going from an employee mindset to an owner mindset, or like if you go to a 1099 mindset, that's a huge shift. So for me, I did them in small steps. I started I would say it's nice to create your own LLC or just a name that kind of like symbolize who you are, or kind of it feels like it's yours. And so starting with that, there's so much you can learn from an accounting standpoint. And I'm not an accountant, so I probably shouldn't say all the things that I do, but I will tell you, I'm my own business owner. I pay myself as an employee. I have my own self-directed 401k. I transferred from my prior employer. Basically, my business has its own 401k, so I can contribute to my own situation. And that's just really freeing feeling that you kind of are controlling those things. You have the ability, when you self-direct, you could invest in real estate. You don't have to be part of the stock market. There's just so many options. And again, it's overwhelming. Some people get caught up in those details. It depends who you are. I love options, and so it gets me very excited. But anyone stepping out, I think the first thing I would always say is if you can cut back one day a week, it's life-changing. And use that time to explore other things, or spend time with the people you care about. Because I think you and I probably agree that as you get older, you realize that your relationships and the people you surround yourself with are incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't make space for them if you're always at work. not to say there's anything wrong with devoting your life, but I do feel like I have other things to give other than just in medicine. And if it's even just giving back to yourself or to your spouse, to your, children, if you have children, or to the community, you could go volunteer in things that maybe you're curious about, and you might find something. I think find a hobby or something. Just because you never are exposed to it, you don't know you like it or love it unless you try it. So I think that's really the best, I think, place to start. And if that means going from a W-2 to a 1099 and lose your benefits, that's up to you. But at the same time, I think there's so much demand for physicians right now. I think if you really look at what your expenses are, you can always shave off other things and compensate for that. But I think you have to free up your time to even have a breath, to even know what you'd want to do. But it's amazing.
I'm in a private practice, and I would never trade, being my own boss for working for a health system. And certainly there's risks. I mean, the pandemic was really scary, being a business owner and being in medicine, but I completely, that resonates with me. Just I come and go when I need to and when I want to, and I'm only in clinical practice 4 days a week. I mean, I will not lie. I'm an OBGYN. So let's be real. I'm there weekends. I was just doing a C-section this morning, and today is my off day. But, I build those buffers in so that I can continue to do what I love doing. And I do love delivering babies, and I love doing surgery but you have to find that right balance, because at the end of the day, you don't know how long you have, and at the end of the road, you don't want to, you're right, burn all those relationships, along the way. And I think deep, meaningful human connection is really what we all find most joy in. And you don't want to sacrifice that for anything. I loved earlier when you said not trading your time for money, because I think, I'm in a place in my life where it's just like, okay, time is money, time is money, time is money. Like if I'm not making money, I got to be giving it up for something really valuable, But that just sounded so freeing when you said that. I love it.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, I think there's a lot of physicians out there that they're feeling things inside and they're not acting on it. And I don't think we always know why. To give an example, I think I worked out like a fiend in my 20s because of a poor relationship I was in. I don't consider myself an anxious person, but I'm a physician. I'm a hypervigilant person. I'm very attentive to detail, and I notice everything. And it's just part of our nature, I think, as we're trained as physicians too, to be like that. But I realize, even though exercise is good, you can take it to an extreme. And I think I was compensating. I didn't realize that all the tension and the unhealthiness of my relationship, I had to go to the gym to feel okay. But I didn't think of it back then that way. But when I look back on it, the emotional awareness and my emotional intelligence back then was really poor. I feel like I was just on this like go and can't really understand and see. But this personal development arc in the last 10 to 20 years has been really crucial for me to understand that was part of why I was probably, and this is my impression, like our attributions to things could be completely wrong. Our brain's trying to make sense of the world. We're trying to feel safe in the world. And I think looking back, I do feel like that was my way of releasing tension in my body that was not being emotionally regulated well, or I was in an unhealthy situation where it was just coming out, it was staying in my body. And when I worked out, I felt better. And I really think that was part of it. So I say all that because I think that it's insidious how sometimes the system in which you work, if it's not healthy or toxic, how sometimes we can make excuses for it, and it can just kind of like simmer under the surface. And then you start having like anxiety or panic attacks, or you can't sleep well, or you're having other physical manifestations, and you're not necessarily dealing with what it is, and maybe the way you're managing it or dealing with the situation, or just maybe you shouldn't be in that toxic culture. Most people shouldn't. So I think that it's really important for people to reflect on, why is it I'm feeling this way, or what's the circumstance? Is this really good for me? Is this good for my family? And those are, I think, and sometimes it takes that extra day off and that feeling of kind of like a little bit of, I think you can see your life a little clearer when you're not on the go all the time. And it's not always easy, especially if you're in a profession where you're having to run around on weekends, and it really takes a lot of work to figure it out.
So you run a website, Challenge Doctor. Tell us about that.
Well, actually, I had this wasn't even for this, but so if you look at the word challenge and you look at the first 3 letters and the last 3 letters, you can see change within challenge. So sometimes we get very, overwhelmed by the challenge of whatever it is in life. And if you realize that challenge is okay, you actually can get change through that challenge. It's just like any lessons in life. It's not failures, it's lessons. And I feel like I've had challenges dealing with the medical system. I've seen patients have challenges with their issues or their pain. And I feel like the reason I'm all over the place is because that kind of encompasses everything in life and in medicine. It's just like there are ways. Now I can't change the construct of the medical industrial complex. That is like nearly impossible. Like, so I feel like I'm just shouting from the rooftops and it's not going to change anything. But I feel like if you can help people realize that there is hope and that there are possibilities of change despite these challenges, I think that I'm trying to inspire, challenge, educate people. And so it could encompass anything. And so I feel like the Challenge Doctor, it's just me. I've been told I'm a eternally optimistic person, but I do realize that things are not always optimistic in this world, but I can't control everything that goes on out there. I can only control what's going on in here. So my perception of a challenge is that what can I make good out of that? And sometimes I fall flat on my face, but that's okay. You just get back up. So I think I'm just trying to share a positive, outlook and mindset and challenge people's thoughts about pain, about maybe, stress and anxiety are very much similar to pain. It's another way of protecting you. So it's there's just different topics. Sometimes I'll just pop on social media. I need to do better at that. Maybe I should get a manager for that, like you do. So it's just a place where I share like what I'm up to. I share about my pain out loud, the books. I've written a book called Pain and Simple. I like playing on words, obviously. And that was just all my trips to Australia, I'm taking pictures and I'm creating the next Pain and Simple book. So,
very nice.
It's all text right off. Every day I'm taking pictures. So, so I try to be creative.
There's the cheat code right there.
Yeah. I did that in residency too. Whenever we got money to go to conferences, I'd find a place where my friend was that I want to go visit. And then, so just be, resourceful and
Smart. I've been thinking about Greece, but now I'm going to have to figure out how to do business there.
Yes. Oh yes. And you have to do an annual meeting if you do an LLC, technically, to be within the guidelines or the rules. You have to have an annual meeting or annual meeting notes, which I tend to do in my sunroom. But you could travel, and there's you have to check with your accountant, but you can do an annual meeting in Greece and make your plans for the year. And I mean, you can even lease out your own house.
Episode that we need to find a tax accountant, you guys.
Yes. There's some good stuff out there, but you learn a little bit all the time. So I don't know everything, but
for our entrepreneurial doctors, I know my limitations, and I do have my own LLC outside of my private practice, and oh my gosh, I lean on those professionals to tell me what to do, because it's a whole nother world,
Yes.
So what's in the future for you? It seems like you've gone a lot of different directions. Do you love where things are at? Do you ever see yourself practicing in Australia?
If my husband wants to work there as well, which is a possibility.
Is he in medicine?
No, not at all.
Okay.
He's working on his podcast right now. You want me to plug that in? I'm kidding.
Interest us. We don't have.
No, I mean, it's basically on a rugby league. So he is a passionate rugby league fan since he was introduced in 2010 when we first went. So if he has to me, he offered, I mean, we have our home here and he's not quite ready to make the move. He's willing to let me go over there for a year, but that doesn't make me happy. I want him to be with me. So if he and I are both excited about an opportunity over there, which I have till April 2025 to start a job because I already got the approval. It's possible that, yes, that would be a possibility. Now I'd have to do OB anesthesia attendant forever. And so it would be a little bit of a, back to the learning curve again.
Yeah.
But, just like you learned them before, you can learn it again. So, so a little bit more stressful just to get back in the swing of that. But if not that, we'll still travel there. But yeah, I mean, if we stayed there for 4 years, we could be dual citizens. So that's kind of neat. Yeah. You get a 4-year visa, and then at the completion of that, you can apply for citizenship too. But so as a physician, there's a lot of Australia or New Zealand. You have great options. But for future, I think it's still wide open because, I don't plan on doing anesthesia till like I'm 70 or 80. But there are so many different things as a physician. You have so many skill sets that you don't even realize. I mean, we even forget the knowledge we have sometimes until you talk to someone who's completely not knowledgeable. And you're like, how do you not know that? So it can be applied in so many ways. So I'm open to all kinds of things out there. I'd love to work with animals at some point. So whether it's volunteering my time or being part of some big project, maybe I can hook up with veterinarian and I can be like an assistant, but not, I don't have the veterinarian training. So be apprentice. So it's all wide open, but I love that. I love adventure. I love travel, and I love animals and nature. And I think we need to take better care of each other and the world. And however I can do that with my husband by my side, that's where it's going to go.
That's amazing. That's a great perspective. Well, Dr. Cady, it's been such a pleasure. Where can people find you, find your work if they want to?
Sure. Well, challengedoctor.com or thechallengedoctor.com. Either one will go to the same place, and you can keep up there. You can sign up for a mailing list, but I'm on Instagram. I need to post a little more frequently, but be patient. I'll come around. But that's probably the best places.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you guys listening. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode on the Strong MD podcast. I hope you enjoyed Dr. Cady and everything she had to share with us. If anything, I'll be booking my vacation to New Zealand and doing a little more research on the duck-billed platypus. But if you guys could just help us out by leaving your comments, likes, please subscribe to this podcast and leave your comments. We appreciate it so much. We will catch you on the next episode.